My name is Danny Carroll Rodas. I teach Old Testament at Wheaton College.
Dr. Danny Carroll Rodas, welcome back to Exegetically Speaking.
It's always great to be here in this beautiful library and to be in the company of good friends.
Well,
so thank you for asking me.
You're so kind. You're so kind. We got a question from I'm calling him Presbyterian Brian because he's asked a question about Hosea 6:7. You've done a lot of work on the minor prophets, right?
Yeah.
So that's been your sweet spot, it seems like, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But Hosea 6:7, he asked a question. So the question is, the word Adam in Hosea 6:7, does that refer to Adam in Genesis, or does that refer to a place? So set that up for us. What's going on in Hosea 6, verse 7?
Well, it's a great question, and if you go to different Bible translations, you'll see it. Some take it as a place name, and some will take it as a reference to Adam in Genesis. But it helps to put it into context, because at the end of chapter 5, the Lord is just decreeing judgment upon his people until they repent. And then the interesting thing, when you begin chapter 6, they kind of take all this for granted, and surely he will come, like the fresh rains and the dew and things like this. But then what the Lord will do is he'll reject that, and then he'll say, I've been sending you the prophets, and you've constantly rejected them. And so that sets up, I think, a way of interpreting 6:7, and maybe we'll get to that. Because if you just look at the data, you go, this could be the place name, because there is a town called Adam in Joshua, chapter 3, verse 16. And so some will go that direction. But personally, I think a stronger case can be made for Adam from Genesis, the first few chapters in Genesis.
There's probably a lot of people that don't know that Adam is actually a place name to begin with, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Because it's not on everybody's the tip of their tongue, as it were, compared to the Adam of Genesis and everything. So the passage. Let me read the passage in English. English Standard Version is what I have in front of me. But like Adam, they transgressed the covenant. There they dealt faithlessly with me. So who's speaking at this particular passage?
Well, just the fact that he's saying, dealt faithlessly with me, tells you this is the Lord speaking. And
so Hosea is saying, thus saith the Lord, right, in a way.
So he's speaking through Hosea. But there's several. You want me to go ahead and start of explaining this?
Sure,
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So let me just say how some people would move to the place name.
Okay.
So in fact, in that verse, it'll say there. So now you're thinking about a place, see? And that idea of a place will appear several times. I mean, look in verse 10, you'll see there again. So you can see how this could be taken as some kind of place name. And it also mentions Shechem in verse 9, which is a place name. And so what you'll find is that some will have make a correction to the text. And in Hebrew, it's just changing one letter, and the letters look very much alike. So it can be like Adam would be one way, but the textual note would be in Adam. And it's just the changing of one preposition for another preposition, a kaf for a bait, which, like I said, looks very much alike. So you can see how some people would move to the idea of a place name and not
so like it would be in Adam, that is in the city,
in this town,
because in verse 8 it talks about Gilead is the city of evildoers, right? And then in verse 9, as you said, they murder on their way to Shechem, which indicts Shechem, right, in a sense. And then so you have several place names.
So some would take it as part of a series of place names in places where they have transgressed the covenant. Now, the question that'll come into play as well is, what covenant is he talking about? Is it a covenant between people, or is it a covenant between Israel and God? And that's where the vocabulary can help, because to transgress the covenant is used for transgressing the covenant with God. In fact, the same combination is used in 8:1 of transgressing the covenant. Okay. And in fact, in verse 1 of chapter 8, it's they transgress my covenant. So you can see the connection going on between verse 7 here and then in chapter 8, verse 1. So the idea would be by using Adam. Basically what he's saying is, from the very beginning, this is what it's been like. So it's not just you've done this against others at this town, because if you go on, it talks about all kinds of political and intrigue going on, and even some robbery and murder going on. So that's obviously violating between people. But it's not a human covenant being violated. What you're actually seeing is the way they're violating the covenant with God is by doing these things, because these go hand in hand. Covenant with God demands ethical dealings with other people. So this is how they're proving that they are violating God's covenant, by doing these things. And that is a stronger case, I think, that can be made in light of chapter 5 and chapter 6 of constant rejection of prophetic word and even misconstruing God as he can be taken for granted. So I think that's why I would lean toward Adam and not toward the place.
So Adam, the man, as opposed to the person, were referenced in Genesis,
as
opposed to the place.
Yeah, and if you look at the Septuagint, it'll say anthropos, which is man.
Man.
Right. So the Septuagint took it that way. They don't say Adam of the garden, but they see it as a reference to a person.
Well, Presbyterian Brian, we hope that helps you understand that particular passage. Dr. Danny Carroll Rodas, thanks for being with us today on Exegetically Speaking.
It's always great, and thanks for the chance to talk about a text.
If you learned too much today and your head is hurting, there is one sure cure. That is to share this podcast with a friend. If you've never visited Wheaton College, I hope you'll make plans to do so. We have a wonderful campus all year round. And if biblical languages are your fancy, check out the MA and the BA program at Wheaton College. You can go to wheaton.edu, look for modern and classical languages. Get started today. This is the day you want to do it, right? If you have questions or comments, if you just want to be in touch, please email us at exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. That's exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. Thanks to all those who make this podcast possible. You know who you are. Until next time, thanks for listening.